Welcome to Partners Preparedness. This module can be summed up in one sentence. It'd be, don't plan in a vacuum. When a proposed rule change to the Animal Welfare Act was announced, requiring written contingency plans, there was concern that an owner or director would just walk into someone's office and basically say, we need a plan, just do it. Make sure that you know you should not do it alone. This module will hopefully convince you that your facility needs help when writing the plan. Use your local responders because they already know your local risks. They also have an event history for your area. By tapping into their knowledge, you'll greatly decrease the amount of time required to research your risks. We'll talk more about that in our risk assessment module. But just knowing what has happened before in your facility will not be enough to write a robust plan. Your local partners may also suggest to you a format or a template they'd like you to use. We don't want you to be compelled to reinvent the wheel. If your community emergency manager has a nice format, they'd be glad to share with you. Finally, you should use your local responders in your planning process because they are going to be the ones to show up when you call for assistance. Your responders having a greater awareness of your facility through the planning process will also pay big dividends should they ever need to respond to an incident at your place. Another very important reason that you've got to get local responders involved is because they should integrate you into their plans. They need to know your resources and capabilities. That way, they're going to be much less likely to forget about your resource needs when the time comes. If you're not at the table while they are planning, then you could end up last in line for the resources, and don't let that happen to you. These are some examples of planning partners. Some should be part of your team to help you with plan development. Others may serve as just subject matter experts on key elements of your plan. But you can see that it represents many agencies and disciplines. Key concept everyone should understand is that disasters begin and end locally. Your local responders are the first on the scene, and even in really big incidents like a tornado or a flood, they're also the last to demobilize and go home. They also know the next steps when an incident does escalate past their ability to manage it. The other reason you want to include them in your planning is that they may have little knowledge about you, your collection, and what you do every day. This statement was overheard made by an emergency manager, and frankly, it makes us very nervous. Your facility may be able to handle 90% of the incidents that could happen in your place, but what about the 500-year flood or tornado that rips through your facility? Another thing to consider is that in a large incident, their first responder resources will be stretched really thin. Their priorities may not be the zoo, but rather the apartment complex next door. During the planning process, discuss with your responders how you plan to handle different incidents before they can arrive on the scene to assist you further. Who do we mean when we say local partners? You likely have met or know these folks, but make sure they have some input in your planning process. But don't overlook their function as potential trainers either. We'll talk more about training in Module 6, but your fire department may be a great resource for ICS training and other things. Your emergency management services may offer community first aid classes, fit testing for protective equipment or other services, and your local law enforcement may offer firearm safety training, and just find out what sort of local training they may be able to offer you and your staff. If you've never met your local emergency managers, that should be one of the first action items on your list. They should introduce you to your existing community, hazard identification and risk assessment, or HIRA. The newer term is THIRA, which is just threat and hazard identification and risk assessment. But in either case, they should introduce you to it. Your emergency managers are going to already know the hazards that could affect your community, maybe many that you never even thought about. Also, your emergency managers know how to get some of the stuff you may need in an incident, but you don't have it on hand. They are masters of integration because they are real practitioners of ICS. Don't forget your county emergency response folks either. These folks may not be directly on your contingency planning team per se, but they could provide subject matter expertise or even equipment that you might need in disaster. Public health is a partner in any zoonotic disease shared by man and animals, any event that impacts your collection and might affect the public. They potentially have the power to shut you down too if a disease poses a risk to your staff and guests. So make sure you work with them on any zoonotic disease planning. Your animal control officer may be able to assist you with capture or relocation of some of your animals during evacuation. Extension agents, they may know local farmers who could provide large animal transport equipment. You may be lucky and have a county animal response team or CART. You won't know unless you make an effort to meet these folks and find out how they may be able to help you in a disaster. Let's just say a bit about your state partners and resources. As we mentioned earlier, your local responders know the next steps that be taken if an incident exceeds the local capability. The state resources are deployed only after requested by a local authority. You can't just request them on your own. Your state emergency manager may have additional regional risk information that will help you with your risk assessment. Your local emergency managers will be a conduit to them for additional information on regional risks such as hazardous material storage or petroleum pipelines and other hazards. One state partner that should have direct input in your plans, especially when it comes to infectious disease, is your state animal health official or state veterinarian. Please remember, they bear the responsibility for the health of all animal species in their state, even yours. The exotic animal industry is likely a very small percentage of the animals in your state, so make sure that your state vet knows who you are, where you are, and in the event of a foreign animal disease, they have the statutory authority for decision making. Make sure that your veterinarian knows how to find the state veterinarian and their website. Check it out, learn what's up there. The state vet and the state agriculture websites are great resources for your facility, especially during disease events. When it comes to other stakeholders who can help you with your plans or provide resources, don't overlook your local non-governmental organization or NGOs. These organizations may be great resources. Check out who's in your area. Another likely resource is other wildlife facilities, as they may be able to assist with contingency planning process or share equipment and training and a myriad of things. Their proximity could be a real advantage. You have contingency planning assistance with the ZAHP Fusion Center, which has developed these modules. Currently funded by USDA, the ZAHP Fusion Center works with key players in emergency management across the country to connect the managed wildlife community with information on the 5 critical national preparedness mission areas. These areas are prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. You can learn more about ZAHP by visiting the website zahp.aza.org, and of course, that web address is also found in the workbooks as well. It's important for all exotic animal owners and operators to have a basic understanding of the roles and responsibilities of our federal partners, the United States Department of Agriculture. If you're a member of the exhibitor community, you're already familiar with our key federal partner, USDA Animal Care. They are the subject matter experts in animal welfare, and they inspect licensed exhibitors to assess their compliance with the Animal Welfare Act. But did you know they also have emergency management expertise and assist with preparedness and coordination of response activities for animals in emergencies? Make sure you talk with your inspector during your plan development. Ideally, include them in your planning team. get their input and buy-in of your plans. They may also be able to refer you to other subject matter experts during your plan development. They may even be the ones who evaluate your plan once the new rule is actually in effect. The USDA Wildlife Service is a federal partner that isn't as well known in the exhibitor community. Very simply, Wildlife Services manages human-wildlife conflict, and this could be the management of migratory birds near airports to prevent aircraft collision, or dealing with destructive feral swine. USDA Wildlife Services provided excellent guidance to the exhibitor community when high-path avian influenza was detected in late 2014. They recommended strategies that would decrease the attractiveness of outdoor exhibits to wild waterfowl, some of the reservoir species that may be carrying this virus. The information they provided is available on the ZAHP website. It's recommended that your local USDA Wildlife Services contact information should be in your Rolodex or contact list to advise you on issues with wildlife management. Another federal partner that you need to be aware of is USDA Veterinary Services. These are disease specialists for the USDA. They have many roles in animal health. With an outbreak of foreign animal disease, they are an important part of the disease response. They utilize the incident command system to guide response and efforts in disease control and eradication. One of their most important resources is the National Veterinary Stockpile, which contains disease control equipment and supplies that can be mobilized when a state and local resources are exhausted. USDA Veterinary Services is organized into districts, and their animal health webpage is a great resource when you're considering planning for disease events. Your state veterinarian and veterinary services work hand in hand on farm animal disease issues. Disease outbreaks must be discussed during your planning process. Before you're introduced to another USDA partner, Preparedness, a bit of background is in order. There is a framework that exists, like a roadmap for how the United States should organize itself to respond to natural disasters, terror attacks, or other catastrophic events. This is known as the National Response Framework, or the NRF. This framework stresses that entire communities, public and private sectors, should work together to assist in response efforts. Remember that the whole community planning principle is important. Remember that from the first module? The National Response Framework reinforces that need for cooperation and integration. This can be a little confusing, we know. The NRF groups the capabilities needed to respond to catastrophic events into Emergency Support Functions, or ESFs, and assigns different agencies to oversee each of those functions. Here they are. And you can see that the recovery of all of these sectors is necessary to allow for a robust recovery from an incident. ESF 11 is agriculture and natural resources. The USDA has employees that are ESF 11 coordinators assigned to the Federal Emergency Management Agency by region. We'll discuss a bit more about FEMA a little later. Here is a contemporary map of the FEMA regions and the USDA employees assigned to those regions. Can you see which one's yours? USDA ESF 11 coordinators, they prepare, plan, and coordinate amongst the USDA, the Department of Interior, and some other agencies. ESF 11 primary functions are to provide nutrition assistance to people in disasters, respond to animal and agricultural health issues, and provide technical assistance in animal emergency management. They're also involved in ensuring food safety. And of interest to us, they provide help for natural and cultural resources and historic properties. Why do we care? Well, a number of zoos and aquariums are considered natural and historic properties. Your ESF 11 coordinators, the ones in your region, may also be a resource for training and exercise opportunities for you and your facility. So you can see why it's important to give you an additional information on ESF 11 coordinators within the USDA. It's important to briefly mention the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. We hope that none of you ever have to become too familiar with this organization. That would mean that something catastrophic has really happened to your facility. However, you need to know some basic information about FEMA and what they do. Simply put, think about FEMA as a big checkbook, which can be very hard to access. What is very important for everyone to realize is that FEMA steps in to assist only when a disaster is so large that local jurisdictions and entire states can't manage it, and a federal disaster declaration is made. Many instances never rise to the level of a federal declaration, even though it may be catastrophic to your facility. Support through FEMA is generally via reimbursement process, so you'll need to think about alternative sources of immediate response and recovery support just to function in the meantime, even if you'll qualify for reimbursement at a later date. We highly recommend that you find out more about your eligibility for FEMA support by discussing this with your local emergency manager. They're your best source for information about FEMA and your facility. Before we move off the topic of FEMA, their website, FEMA.gov, has lots of good information on disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. FEMA also supports training classes and opportunities through their Emergency Management Institute. Many courses are free and available online. This module gives a brief introduction to some of the partners that you have in preparedness and response. Some of these stakeholders, such as emergency managers and your first responders, should be heavily involved in helping you write your plans. Other stakeholders, like USDA or your state veterinarian and others, can provide input and plan review. Integration is the key to having a truly useful plan. That integration may be critical to get a good place in line, to get the things you need to respond to incidents and disasters. That integration and timely acquisition of resources may mean a more successful outcome with a quicker return to normal activity and business continuity. To draft useful plans, besides having the right people to help you, facilities must figure out for what you need to prepare. Module 3 will help you with that by introducing the concept of risk assessment.